and welcome to a Christmas and New Year special of the Magpie Circle podcast. I'm doing my best to get into the festive spirit. I have got a black and white Santa hat, and over there is Frosty the Snowman. But after coming back from Harrogate, it's not been too easy to summon up too much Christmas spirit at the moment. Joining me tonight, Mr. Stallard, final time for 2023. Lots to chew through and digest, Stell, and we've already got quite a few questions for you. Now, I've not heard it all, but I do know that you were, I guess, searingly honest. We had a debate earlier this season, didn't we? And I said I wouldn't be surprised if we went 5 games or so without a win, and you weren't sure about that. We've now lost 4 in 6. We'll get some thoughts and comments in a moment, but let's kick off the show before we try and interject a bit of Christmas and New Year's spirit from when you was a player and what the lads all used to get up to on Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, or whatever. But still, look, we are still in the playoffs, but it's a poor run of form, no getting away from it, and there's been some poor performances. Where do you stand?
Well, I stand with that. I don't disagree with anything you said there. I think I'm very nervous about.
In your mind, as an ex-pro, Stel, how serious is what we are going through at the minute in the overall context of a season?
Look, it's not doom gloom. Everything's over. Woe is us. It's not that. It's a certain loss of form. Certainly, a downturn in performance levels. Like I say, I can remember loads of them throughout my career. Absolutely loads of them. I think that the thing that makes this seem worse is the sort of 18 months that have preceded it, where it has been almost universally wins. There hasn't been a downturn, or certainly not an extended downturn in performance. You struggle to think of 2 poor performances back to back since Luke Williams has been at the helm. So this is. It almost shocks you a little bit more because it is out of the blue. It's the first time we've experienced it under Luke. But when you take it in the larger context of go back the last 30 years, this is nothing. This is a drop in the ocean in terms of what's been experienced over the last 30 years. So, you have got to bring perspective to it. It's not going to be a, kick the cat, Christmas is cancelled and, it's all doom and gloom. Will we stay up kind of conversation? But it is worrying. It is a worrying sort of run of form, loss of form. And like I say, that there's plenty of bits I'm sure we'll go over tonight as to reasons why or potential reasons why it is a problem.
Okay, let's get an initial stock take of views from our flock, and there's plenty of them. Nick G says, what's going wrong, Stel? Too many silly mistakes, yes. The majority were playing conference football last year. Defence has gone to pot. Can we get an emergency keeper in? We'll debate that in a moment. I think that it's not just the keeper at fault, says John Parnham. Chris Gosling, regular contributor. The most worrying defeat yet for me, he says. No spirit, no cohesion, no unity, such a far cry from the knots of last season. To me, it looked as though some players know they are going to be out in the cold in January. David Skinner, hello from Hornchurch. Does Mr. Stallard think we have too many players in our starting 11 who are basically non-league players only? David Skinner adds, where's that man made? Kick off at 7 p.m. Apologies. Yeah, a little bit late. My fault. Paul Hawksworth. Surely structural changes are needed for Friday to keep us in the game early on. Derek Flowers. No depth in the squad. Too many players not good enough. Pythagorean says, agree, Chris Gosling. No one was looking to receive the ball static. I thought Harrogate's mascot looked more assured between the sticks than stone. Nick G, David, you don't need Stell to tell you that. Adam Kent, the most worrying thing is that we seem to have few options going forward. Mac has hardly seen the ball. Yes, we let in a few, but used to score a lot more. Richard Hawksworth, evening all. The brothers are both listening in. Given recent performances, is it time for tweaks in the formation as well as looking to the window for changes of personnel? Senga Schmidt, that's a new one on me. No movement off the ball, too slow, no goalkeeper, we have problems. Hello from Karen Knight. Kay says, I think there is something wrong behind the scenes, lots of rumours. Callum says Matty Palmer is obviously a massive miss for us. He would always be there to collect the ball in midfield. Derek Flowers, John Sheridan, 10 games without a win. Derek, hey, you make some salient comments. I've got to say, that is... Do you really remember John Sheridan and Notts County? We are not plumbing those depths. Not by a long way. Stel, goals conceded. Someone gave me a stat that I have no reason to disbelieve, that our concession of goals per game is marginally worse per game than the year we were relegated out of the Football League. We spoke a little bit about a few weeks ago about conceding too many goals, but being in the playoffs for quite a long period of time. The league's starting to close up. It will close up more because we've played 1/2 games more than teams immediately below us. There's a little cushion at the minute. For you, is this where it all starts to try to sort it out again? Just or other, bung it up a bit, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you can't continue conceding. I think everybody knows that, and a lot of the points you've just read out there, Paul, are absolutely spot on. You know, people watch the games, see what's happening, and aren't daft. What I was saying, you know, it's not just one problem within a football team. The problem is conceding goals, so automatically people look at the goalie and the defenders. You know, and that isn't necessarily wrong, but there's generally more to it than that. And people said that, you know, certainly for Saturday, we seemed static. I think I said on radio, I might have said off air, that we look jaded. We look like a jaded team that we're tired, and we've not had a midweek game for a while. So there's no excuse really there. But we looked a bit of a lethargic team. You know, I'm sure the stats might not back that up so much, but we just looked. The options for the man on the ball weren't great. So look, yeah, the first thing to answer the question, to come back to the point, we have got to cut down the number of goals we concede. Luke Williams knows that, right? Everybody knows that. That isn't, you know, coming up with a new way of revolutionising football. How you do that? That's the $64 million question, isn't it? Because, you know, people will say personnel, and it's coming around to January, and you know, I'm absolutely agree. I think we'd need at least one defender. You know, a defender who, you know, obviously it's got to be better than what we've got. It's not just a defender for defender's sake, but it's a defender who primarily can defend. You know, whose number one strength, if you like, is defending 1v1 situations. You know, every professional footballer, even at League Two level, even if they are a defensive defender, can pass the ball to a certain level. Like I say, so we're all looking for a Baresi who can, you know, play the ball, a Beckenbauer or whoever we're looking for, you know, can play with the ball brilliantly, but who can also defend brilliantly. You're not going to get that in League Two, so you have to sort of pick and choose wisely. But I think a defender who is good, at least one, but maybe two. Again, it depends on budget, it depends on what's available. But certainly that's the area we've got to shore up. And, you know, it's not just defending. Yes, I think they might well look at bringing in another midfield player. You know, Matty Palmer's gone for the season. He's a massive loss. He's a massive loss, not just with his ball playing, the amount of passes he has, and connecting the dots, as I call it, you know, the little passes, intricate passes, and simple 5-10 yard passes. But it's also the work he does off the ball, breaking up the opposition's attacks, winning the ball back, hustling, harrying, you know, just giving that bit of legs and enthusiasm in the middle of the park as well, which takes pressure off the defenders. So, well, there's not one easy fix. You know, allied to that, players are, I would say, across the team, almost without exception, I would say everybody in the last couple of games has been a good 5% below the level that's required. You could make an exception. You know, Jody Jones looked most lively brilliant free kick, but look the most lively on Saturday. But you're not picking too many Notts players in the last couple of games that have really, covered themselves with glory or reached the levels that we know they can reach. At the start of the season, they were reaching it. So I also am a bit loath to say, no, these players aren't good enough for League Two, because they look good enough for League Two, 6 weeks ago, 10 weeks ago, start of the season, first couple of months of the season. But are they consistent enough? Can they produce it consistently enough? That's the question. But either way, we're coming around to a transfer window, and then the club. Well, you assume the club will be looking to bring bodies in, and performances like Saturday, like against Walsall, like we've had in recent weeks, are doing nothing to say to the manager, to the recruitment staff, to Richard Montague and the data people that will be looking, or have been looking all throughout the season. The performances are saying nothing to say, you don't need to bring anybody in my position because I've got it covered. I've got this locked up. There's a lot of open, available spots, if you like, at the minute, that where we've gone from, first couple of months of the season, I think Luke Williams would have known 75 to 80% of the team that he wanted to pick and what positions, to now, I think he's probably down at about 20, 25% of the team that he knows what he wants at the minute. And then do we come into changing the shape? Do we come into changing the personnel? Do we do both? Look, that's down to the coaching staff, but things have to change. But first and foremost, fundamentally, the performance levels have got to improve.
Dan Hayward says the midfield fell apart and exposed a dodgy defence and keeper. Bostock not 100% and Gosling is not getting minutes. Nick G raises the point about the player from Ireland. That's Connor Keeley. He has decided to stay in Ireland. He signed for St Patrick's Athletic, so he is definitely not coming. Reportedly the subject of 2 bids by Notts that were turned down by his Irish club earlier this season, so he's not coming. Palmer is a massive loss, says Chris B, but the warning signs have been there all season. When we were top, there were plenty of games that could have gone either way. Callum says, I think we need to play with a proper DM defensive midfielder who can be in those possessions Matty used to naturally put himself into. Doesn't seem the current midfielders do that naturally. AD Clark, all I want for Christmas is a clean sheet. Don't we all? Rich Hawksworth, tell you what, Paul, myself and if you listen to our conversation this morning, that's him and his brother, Paul Hawksworth, about the current form, you would have called us the Brothers Grimm. Ian G, I honestly feel, this is interesting, we are finding our level after a flattering start, and mid-table will be our position come May. David Skinner, picking up on a point that you made, Stel. If we look jaded, may I suggest we are overtraining? I know as a runner, if I go into a race feeling tired, 9 times out of 10, I've overtrained. Nick G, it looked as though they were all told the Christmas party had been cancelled. James Shipley, the acquisition of one higher caliber defender will naturally raise the level of those around them. Problem is in January, that type of player may not be available. Historically, always renowned January as not a good transfer window to do your business. Chris Gosling, I think it's time to move to a back where we expose defensively in the wide areas. A back 4 with 2 traditional fullbacks with 2 CDMs protecting them will give us a much sounder base to build. What is the situation with Bostock's fitness, says Rich Hawksworth. More passion, more energy, says Stumac. John Parnham, we definitely missed Didsey on Saturday. He not only plays well up front, but also works hard in defence. What else have we got? Chris Gosling. They had their Christmas party 2 weeks ago, says Chris. Some players like they were still in the bar. We'll come on to Christmas parties in a minute, Stella. I'm sure you've got a few tales from Christmas party. Pre-social media, you can get away with I've been to a few when I was at Leicester. You could get away with anything and everything, couldn't you? Not now, not now. Andy Esom, 7 subs, only 1 used on Saturday. Said a lot to me about our strength in depth. What on earth has happened to Will Randall again? We need a new Paul Harding in midfield, says Duncan Comrie. We need a new Dean Yates, says Nick G. Ian G says, and a Chris Short. Other than that, we're fine. Stel, let me just pick up goalkeepers. And I'm very pleased your man asked an appropriate question from the BBC on goalkeepers, because I think there was certainly around me on Saturday, there was a bit of a mutiny going on when we see young Tiernan Brooks flying around like a wombat, warming up the keeper, and we look on and we see on the team sheet 7 subs, no goalkeeper. Oi, what's going on? And of course, I know that Luke likes to try and keep things a little bit quiet with things, but he was asked a direct question and gave a reply that Tiernan can't play till January the 1st. It's to do with transfer windows, not when he actually came back from Ireland. So he is available from January the 1st. Do you, given that Sam Slocum is now, the phrase that was used was torn a hip flexor, which I would suggest to me, it's a few weeks, and we've got something like 4 games coming up in 11 days. I don't think he'd be available for any of them. The goalkeeper would be available for the last of those on New Year's Day. Would you be tempted to use Tiernan Brooks, or do you stick tried and trusted with Aidan, and or do you bring a lone goalkeeper in from January the 1st?
Well, the answer to that, I would say, is very much dictated to by performances over the next 3 games. To get you, because obviously, like I say, it's a moot point for the next 3 games. Tiernan can't play, isn't available, and other than a 7-day emergency loan for a keeper, which I think, if I know the rule, Aidan Stone would have to be injured for that to be granted. Then we couldn't bring an emergency. So I think as we stand, it is going to be Aidan Stone for the next 3 games. And I think, like a lot of players, it's down to his performance. It's in his hands. No pun intended, but it's down to his performances over the next 3 games as to whether Luke, and well, it's not Luke, is it? It's the club will look to maybe strengthen. Obviously, they'll have more information about Sam Slocum's injury, how long he's likely to be out for. But look, Tiernan Brooks he's had a bit of a taste, hasn't he? We've had a little look at him last season, and he seemed to manage okay. It would be a tough call, but I think if Tiernan Brooks was to play, I think that would mean Aidan Stone's had 3 pretty poor performances between now and January the 1st. So, look, the ball's in Aidan Stone's court. I thought, I've got to be honest, he's had a very difficult first few months at Notts. Obviously starting with sent off first day, which is not really any fault of his really. But performance wise, I'm not sure he'll be happy with how he's performed. He came in to be number 1, was given the confidence boost of being selected for the first game and the first few games when he was available. From the performances that I've seen, has he been a big upgrade over Sam Slocum? I would say no. If we're sat here now, I would arguably say that if Sam was fit, he would be the first choice keeper. But again, you could argue the toss about that, but that's all theoretical. That's all pie in the sky. Sam isn't fit. Aidan Stone is fit. Tiernan Brooks can't play until January the 1st. So Aidan Stone, well, barring illness or injury, is going to play in goal these next 3 games.
Yeah.
And that is, like I always say, when you get a starting shirt for the outfield players, it's just the same for a keeper. Your performances dictate whether the manager, the head coach, the staff, everybody has faith in you and will keep you there. Your performances dictate whether you stay in the team. It's not a charity case. It's not, any other reason than that. And if his performances don't dictate, just like all the outfield players, if his performances dip and, you lose the confidence of the coach and the Luke Williams basically who's selecting the team, then you won't play, and the club will do something about bringing somebody in to replace you. So the ball is very, very firmly in his court. He's had a difficult time. He had a difficult game on Saturday. Again, he's asked to do a lot with the ball at his feet, and my God, he had plenty of ball to play. I think he had the most touches, most completed passes, I think, of any Notts player. But again, you look at the goal, one spills from his grasp for the second goal. He's had a difficult time. But like any footballer, you go through difficult spells in your career. It's how you've got the mentality, how you react to that. You've got to be strong. That's what professionalism is. That's what strong mentality is all about. Nobody, if you want to have a footballing career that goes on for more than 6 months, you're going to go through a rough spell. There are going to be ups and downs along the way. And that's individually, and that could apply to the team as a whole as well. Almost the last 18 months has gone absolutely flawlessly, but now we're in rocky waters. The first time really for since Luke Williams has been there. But individually, you can analyse each individual player and look at them and say, well, we're in rocky waters. How are your performance levels? Where's your performance levels? And you could do that throughout the squad. And like I say, at the minute, certainly recent last 2-3 games, there's not many that could really say, no, my levels have been consistent. My levels have been, up with what is going to be good enough. They haven't been, but that happens in football. And class is permanent. Form is temporary. This form needs to be temporary, but we need to be out of it quickly. They've shown at the start of the season, all of them, that they can perform at this level. Aidan Stone has played at this level before and higher. He can perform at this level, but he's just, I'm sure he will say he's just not been at the top of his form, which unfortunately is not what you want when you go to a new club. You want to show them exactly what you can do so you can build a bit of credit in the bank. But he, like all the other players, have got to look at themselves, got to work hard, got to go out on the pitch and give a performance that will turn it round.
Chris Gosling injects a little bit of humour. He said that with Belshaw joining Harrogate on an emergency loan and Michael Doyle now manager at Woking, we've missed out on 2 goalkeepers in the last week. Very good, very good. Bringing players in. I mean, my 2 penneth on this as a rank amateur, as Derek Pavis would always say to Neil Warnock, was we started badly with the goals at Sutton, and kind of Luke pulled a bit of a rabbit out of a hat, if you remember, when he switched Brindley into the middle of a 3, didn't he? No one saw that really coming, and it kind of plugged the gap, and we got a few results. Then we kind of had to change it back, and it almost seems to me, and Kyle's missed a few games this season. Luke's constantly trying to just put a little rabbit out of a hat, thumb us in the dike defensively to try and shore us up. And I think possibly maybe a few weeks ago now, we've kind of reached a point where it can't. There's too many holes to put the thumbs in with what we've got at the minute, and I don't see any other rabbits he can pull out. And I just think it is so crucial that we bring players in to add to a group of players, give them a bit more confidence. But the question I asked Stel is that historically, with our recruitment, I'm struggling to think of what I would call a game-ready player that we've brought straight into the squad that a week later is playing. Now, yeah, I know people say, oh, Macaulay Langstaff, but it was a full pre-season. Yeah, when we brought John Bostock and Jody Jones, he spoke at length about how he had to bring them up to speed. He was nervous about telling John Bostock, you're not good enough to play for me in the National League. Jody Jones, you're not good enough to play for me week in, week out in the National League with what I want to do. A lot of fans were screaming, we've got to have a player in midfield. Dan Gosling, fantastic, played Premier League football. Fantastic, brilliant. The reality was he hadn't kicked a professional ball in anger for like 12 months and wasn't going to be fit enough. And clearly he's still acclimatizing, otherwise he would have been in the team. How difficult is it, or do we have to compromise some of our recruitment metrics if we want to be? Because do you not think the players, if and when we bring them in, need to be brought in and need to be League Two ready and drop straight into the team?
Yeah, of course. Ideally, you want to bring players in that are up to speed. The difficulty with that, as we all know, is that midway through a season, who are we going to get? Where are we looking, and who are we going to get? We know whatever position it is, defence, midfield, up front, whatever we're looking at. You're either looking at a player that is out of the team at the club that he's at. I'm assuming we're not going to go in with big bids for somebody who is playing,
Yeah.
So I'm thinking we're getting somebody who's out of favour at the club that they're at. Maybe I would suggest look at a Championship or certainly top end of League One club. See who's out of favour. See if there's anybody there who we could get. But they're going to be out of favour. They're not going to be playing. So therefore, there's going to be an element of them not being quite match fit. It's not going to be to the element of a Dan Gosling who's had a year out through a horrendous injury. That takes an unbelievable amount of time to come back from, heart, desire, drive, to actually get back from, assuming he can get back, and we hope he can get back to full speed from that. But somebody else who's not playing. But then you're talking about maybe a similar position to like a Jody Jones or a John Bostock who got the ability, but for various reasons, obviously hadn't been playing or not been fully utilised week in, week out, and so they're available for us. But then you've got to get them up to speed. Then you've got to get them to know the roles within the team. I think the defensive positions, again, I always simplify things with defenders, but I think the defensive part of the team is not as complex as the attacking part of the team. If you're talking about a centre half, particularly bringing that in, I don't think that's as complicated or as technically complicated as playing the little midfield roles or little withdrawn roles that like a Dan Crowley or like where Sam Austin played, where Didsey plays most games. So there's always an element of it having to introduce yourself and integrate yourself into a style of playing when you play for a new manager in a new club. Every team plays slightly differently, and everybody sees the role slightly differently, and every manager wants a different thing, really, slightly different thing. But I think defensively, I think they're easier to integrate. Now, again, what do we look at? Are we even thinking that we're going to sign somebody permanently, or are they going to be looking at loans? This is, again, it comes up to what's available. It depends on budget. There's a lot of factors coming. We can all play Championship manager, football manager, whatever it is going, I want him out and I'll have him in and, whatever. But everything's got to be viable in the real world, not on a computer. So I would question whether we, in January, do we look to sign permanent players? Because as you've alluded to there, it's generally not always the best time to sign permanent players, but there might be loan deals to be done. Players that have not had game time at their club who are looking for first team football, looking for games, looking for minutes. And then you can sometimes get a better quality of player than if you were looking to make it permanently. So that's why I talk about looking maybe in the Championship, players that are not playing regularly up there, but are fit, have been getting some game time, but not regular, and are maybe looking to go and get more minutes, looking to play regularly. Now, Notts is a big club. At League Two level, it's a big club. We're still sat fairly pretty in the league, to a point where we would be an attractive proposition to, let's call it somebody, a bit part player, but it's somebody who's not playing regularly, so Championship, top end of League One. So again, you've got to do your homework, which I'm sure they will be doing, on who and what they can add, and are they better than what we've got? And again, you don't just judge it on the fact of, are they better than the form of the players that we've got now? Are they better than the players that we've got now? The players that we've got now are not as good as the same players 2 months ago, if you judge it on form like that. So you've always got to be very careful of taking a short-sighted approach to things form, yes, has got to improve, but is that because the player isn't good enough, or is he just having a bad spell? And again, I would say you could go through the whole team, and there's quite a few players at the minute just not near their top form. So can that be turned around? And again, it's down to the players in game. You've got to put in a performance. If you carry on not performing, you find yourself out of the team and somebody replaces you. It's always the way that, football changes throughout time, but some things remain constant. If you don't perform, you don't get in the team eventually, So some players have got a bit of credit in the bank. That credit's running thin. That credit is running thin now with a poor run of form. They've got to turn it around. Have they got the ability to do that? Yes, they have, because we've seen it already this season. But does that mean they will, and they'll do it quickly enough before the manager loses a bit of faith and confidence in them? Time will tell. And like I say, they've got pretty much till January to turn that form around.
Paul Taylor 23 says we need to play 4-5-1 for a couple of games and frustrate the opposition like we had to play against last year. Nick G says too many expectations of us going up on our first attempt and competing with Wrexham as we did last. Where is Kel Roberts these days? He's at Scunthorpe, Nick. Went from Aberdeen to Scunthorpe. Not perhaps the greatest career move, but anyway. Chris Jordan, I think I've cracked it. Joe Worrell and Jesse Lingard on loan for the rest of the season, and Kasper Schmeichel back to end his career between the sticks. Sorted. I feel for Macca, says Kay. He's getting no service and looks dejected. Senga Schmidt, go for Premier under-21s. Some cracking deals to be had. Darren Haynes agreed we need a defender. Would still prefer a young player with potential or what we can develop. I think we need to add some hungry players, says Chris Play. Let's look to young National League players, especially for midfield. We need another Grealish style loan, says Ian G. Well, that'd be good, wouldn't it? Currently need some experience to be added to that defence, says Darren Haynes. Why aren't we looking at Forest? They must have a few players we could loan, says Kay. I just want to change the subject a little bit, Stel. Ex-player. Not so bad, some bad performances. Luke Williams is always, I think, very honest, pretty direct in his responses to your Radio Nottingham interviews. We all know, however, that players can be a little bit of a precious bunch at times. And one of the constant balances for the manager is how many times can you get away with digging your players out publicly after a game? How much do you cover for them? Because fundamentally, you've got to go back to the well on Monday morning with that group of players, or we certainly have at this moment in time. If you cast your mind back, how much do players hold their hands up and say it's our fault, or actually I'm not doing too bad, it's them, or whatever. I'm not very happy the manager's dug us out again, and all of that sort of thing. Where's that balance?
Well, that's a good point. It's a good question. The honest answer is, in terms of modern day, I've not been in a dressing room, competitive dressing room for, over 15 years. So modern day, it was changing throughout my career. And I don't imagine it's carried on changing. I could always say players, you put your hand up, players know whether they've played well or whether they've not. You can't kid yourself. You can try and kid other people. Then whether you put your hands up about it or not, that is down to a different thing, or whether you get dug out. Look, it's always managing people. The football manager is a multi-skilled job. Not just the tactical, technical aspects of it. It's the man management, and generally, to be a good manager, you've got to be a good man manager, because you're dealing with personalities, egos of all different types, variations. What you can say to one person, you can't say to another. They won't react well to it. You've got to find what pushes people's buttons. And you're talking about a squad of 25 people. Really, you're looking for what pushes their buttons. Some self-manage. Some you'll barely have to say anything to. They'll know. They'll deal with themselves. They'll low maintenance players, and others are right up the other end of the scale, whereby they could go off at any minute, or you've got to be careful what you say. They could sulk. They could fly you off. Whatever. And you've got everywhere in between. So how much you dig your players out can only be an internal decision. There's not a universal fit for, you can dig them out. There's loads of ways. If you keep saying the same, if you keep shouting, like everybody knows, it loses its effectiveness over time. Similarly, if you just come out and sugarcoat everything, then that doesn't wash with people over time. I've said before, and I still think, and particularly after Saturday, I thought Luke. I mean, you could tell by the state of his voice, what he thought of the performance on Saturday. He didn't need to say any words hardly. He was Sean Dyche light on the microphone, wasn't he, with his gravelly voice. And that's the honest truth. You can dig players out when they deserve to be digged out, and players have to take it. If players can't take it, then that's a chink in your professional armour, I would say. Always go back to the conversation, thousands of conversations about football and who was good at football, talking about kids you played with at school right the way through to people you meet in bars or wherever. And I could have been a footballer. I could have been a professional. I could have done, loads of people could have done something, and there's various reasons why not. But part of being a professional footballer is your mental side of it, your mentality, your makeup, whatever you want to call it. As people are talking about, we could do with another Dean Yates, we could do with a Craig Shaw, Chris Shaw, Paul Harding, all them players had a top mentality about the game.
Yeah.
They were good players, but they had a top mentality about the game. And they'll have had strips torn off them left, right, and centre. They'll have been called everything under the sun by their own managers, by fans, but you have to deal with that. That's part and parcel of what comes with being a footballer. And I know the world has moved on, and I know the game has moved on, and I know, life is different now than it was before. But football is still cutthroat. For want of a phrase, it is cutthroat. If you don't perform, you're not in the team. If you're not in the team, you're not happy. And so on and so forth. There's no charity given in football. So, again, you start coming down to we go into the realms of mental health in football, and that's a different conversation. But in terms of managers dealing with players, I think they've got to be more careful now than ever before. Some of the things that got said to me and in dressing rooms I've been in, 20, 30 years ago couldn't be said or tolerated now. But it's still a place where things can be said and action. You need to say things to get a reaction. Not many other careers do you get 15 minutes at half time to say something to players to turn them from playing badly into playing well in the second half, or trying to affect their psyche or their mentality, or trip something in their brain that gives them a kick up the backside, or whatever, or say something positive that gives them a bit of confidence, put an arm around them, or whatever it is, but you need that instant reaction. You 15 minutes you've got to try and change a game around. It's a unique, I say unique, obviously a lot of sport, but sport particularly is a unique sort of framework for things like that. And anyone who's played any sort of sport at any level, will sort of know what happens, in them four walls of a changing room, of a dressing room. It's difficult to manage all different egos, and you can't treat them all the same. But having said that, when players aren't reaching levels, then there is a standard. And I think Luke Williams is one of the things him, Ryan Harley, since they've come to the club, they've set standards, that's pushed it. That's what elevated us from being 4th, 5th in the National League to getting us promoted. That's why we're back in the Football League, because I think they elevated standards and didn't accept us falling short, and drove them standards and pushed the players. And that has to continue. You have to push the players whilst still having the respect to the players, and but at the end of the day, the players are there to do a job, and the manager, it's the manager's job. You manager says jump, you say how high, sort of thing. You're your own entity, but you've got to perform within the framework set down by the manager.
Can you recall? I don't know what was the worst rollicking you personally or as a team had from a manager, or something that a manager said to you that destroyed you for a while, or you thought, I'm not having that, or
there's quite a few, yeah, but it was. But like I say, but that, back in my career, my time, 90s and sort of early 2000s, the football. I mean, when I came into football, cracking me, Arthur Cox was first manager at Derby. It was, he's Sergeant Major-esque.
Yeah.
It was. You didn't say anything back particularly. I was a young lad at the time, but you didn't dare say anything back, hardly. Then as things
Were you
move on,
scared of him? Were you scared of him?
to a point, yeah, a little bit. I say scared, but I would say, yeah, intimidated to the point of, if he said you needed to run more, you ran more, or you tried to run more, or you do something. You look back and go, well, was that good for me? Possibly not, but at the time, like I say, it wasn't that sort of. There was no world out on the outside where we could come out and go, he said something that hurt my feelings there. That's affected my mental health. It wasn't that world. The world has changed, but sport, I just think, because you're looking at elite, to be a footballer, it's elite. To be professional at anything, that is elite level. So you've got to have an elite mindset. And if you haven't got an elite mindset, then you won't reach the standards. Your standard, your talent, won't take you as far, because your mindset will hold you back if it's not up to it. And vice versa, if you've got a brilliant mindset and not the talent, well, you might go further than your talent allows. So that's drifting off the thing. I've had plenty of rollickings, Paul. Yeah, to be honest.
Who was the worst Notts manager? Who was the worst for who would really lose in the dressing room?
Sam Allardyce could. Sam Allardyce could. But to be fair, for the sort of shortish time we were there, I don't remember him really going off on one. Jockey Scott, he could lose it. He could lose it. Although I think I had a decent season under him, so it wasn't directed at me generally. But I say I've had a few, and we've had a few where there's end up fights in the dressing room. Not
really?
necessarily. Yeah. Yeah. It happens because it's a passionate.
Between manager and players, or between the players?
Between the players, usually. Yeah, between the players, usually. Yeah.
So you'd physically confront, and because obviously a lot of people don't realise this, and you have these sanitised sound bites, don't you? Where periodically, in the extra preliminary round of the FA Cup, there's a live sort of cam in the dressing room at half time, and it's all pretty sensible.
But this is what I'm saying. That sort of thing might not happen nowadays, or certainly might not happen as much. And I'm not glorifying it, saying that that's what should happen. I'm just saying it did happen. Not every week, but it happened. Probably more often. I think people who do social media will see that there's a famous Neil Warnock when he was Huddersfield manager. Going around the dressing room at the barn, players. The manager will have a go generally at players, and then players, one or two might have a bit of a go back, or try and put the blame on somebody else when you're being dug out. You're like, well, hold on, he's not doing it, And then all of a sudden you get two players having a go at each other, and that can lead to sort of tempers fraying. Like I say, you've got 15 minutes at half time. It is generally at half time when this happens, because you're in the middle of a game. You're coming in, yes, you want to sit down, but you're just on it. Your adrenaline's going and what have you. And so it doesn't take much to sort of somebody say something that it flares up or whatever. So look, it happens. It's because it doesn't happen every week. I'm not, like I say, I'm not advocating that, but it's because you care. No matter the worst team that you'll ever seen play, still care about the game. No, I firmly believe that there's teams that don't care about the results, and I'm certainly not accusing the current Notts team of anything like this at all. This is just general chat. But it's honestly, players, it matters. It's your livelihood. And like I say, with the cutthroat nature of sport and football, and the players, at Notts at the minute, maybe some of them are playing for the futures. You always, like, a manager's always 3 games from the sack. Players are always 3 or 4 games from your career being on a downward spiral. So you've always got to perform, and I'm not saying you're always on the edge, but you're always pushing yourself, pushing. Can I get more out of myself? And then sometimes, sometimes when you're giving everything and it's all going wrong for you, your touches off, the ball don't come to you, you miss a chance, or whatever it might be, and somebody digs you out for it. Sometimes that you're just not in the right frame of mind to accept it, and you'll have a go back, or you'll say something or whatever. And like I say, the amount of times you'll get an apology on a Sunday morning or a Monday morning at training, you go in and say, "Sorry, Gaffer, I was wrong," or you might go in and say, "Gaffer, I still stand by what we ding donged about," and that's it. But it's largely dealt with and done and forgotten about. And players, very rarely I've been in dressing rooms where players have held grudges, or there's been a continuation of any sort of problem. You the likes of, like, is it Jadon Sancho at Man United at the minute, and things like that. It happens, but it's the rarity.
Okay. Christmas and New Year, we've got 12 points up for grabs, which, if you take out cup games, can be as many points as you play for in a month. But there's 10/11 days in which there are 12 points up for grabs. We've got Stockport away on Friday night, Doncaster at home on Boxing Day, Morecambe at home on a Friday night, 29th, I think, evening kickoff, and then off to Tranmere on New Year's Day. Now, as a professional footballer, Stel, there's no such thing necessarily as Christmas and New Year from a break perspective from your job, is there? You actually gear up. Throughout your career, what was Christmas and New Year like for you? What did it mean to you? Did it bother you that there would always be sacrifices, or it's fantastic because it's 4 games? We won't be doing a lot of training because it's playing, rest, play, rest, play. I mean, what did you, as a pro footballer, think of Christmas and New Year schedule?
Well, to be honest, it was that latter. Yeah, you look forward to it because, you have a Christmas party. Generally, if your results go well, that's something to look for. But you play games. You're playing games thick and fast, and there's chances to score, chances to win points, chances to win games. Again, the ego drive within, I would say, every player wants to play games, because that's where you get your chance to show what you can do. As much as you might enjoy training, or some players didn't enjoy training, or whatever, it's the games. The games are what matters, and to have them. Christmas was always the busiest period, and like I say, this year it's more back to how it used to be, isn't it? 4 games in 11 days, as you say, or 10 days, whatever it is. The games come thick and fast, and you're going to be shattered. Your body's going to ache. You hope to stay fit. That was the first bit. But yeah, chance to play games. You always want to play games. Then the next game can't come round quick enough when you're a player. Your appetite for it is, it's great. So that, because, like I say, you go into it from school, you've no experience of an adult Christmas that isn't football related. So, right from 16 years of age, your Christmas involves a game on Boxing Day, probably a game 2-3 days before, like the schedule is this year, game on New Year's Eve. So you're the only time or the first time you experience anything like a Christmas that everybody has outside of professional sport is when you're injured and you've not got the games to look forward to, and then you're semi-depressed anyway because you're injured. So I used to love Christmas, but not for the reasons people say. I love Christmas now, but for different reasons, but I love, as a player, you loved it because you knew your games, and there were good atmospheres at the games as well. You knew it was the Christmas period. There were special atmospheres. The crowds were generally a bit bigger. That was great. It was great. It didn't bother you it certainly didn't bother me. You might think not looking at me now, but it didn't bother me that I couldn't have a big Christmas dinner or, a beer or whatever on Christmas Day with everyone else. Because that's your profession. You don't do them sort of things, so you're not missing out on it. I've made up for it since. Don't worry about that. I've made up for it since, and so that's one thing you can do when you retire and when you finish. You can enjoy Christmas as other people enjoy Christmases, not worrying about what's on your plate on Christmas dinner, and not worrying about what's in your glass and how many glasses you're having on Christmas Day, things like that. So, it's. But when you're in it, I mean, it's a way of life. You know no different. So it's just a special time of year, busy time of year. But you also know that you have a good Christmas and it sets you up for the running, but the second half of the season. So and obviously also, the FA Cup third round generally gets played early in January. Now, no, we're not in it this year, but as a player, that was always something to sort of aspire to and think, right, we've got this period, 3 or 4 games, short space of time, league games. If we can get 3 or 4 wins, we can make a right move, and then we could have a cup tie as well to look forward to, and then you're into the second half of the season. So well, I used to love it. I used to think it was great, but again, for footballing reasons as opposed to the festive reasons.
Okay, 4 defeats in 6 in the league. Nice easy one. Stockport away, league leaders. I'll give you only one guarantee. Only one guarantee. And we'll see if anyone on our flock is brave enough to admit this. I'm not sure they will. So, a couple of ex-Notts players, Jaden Richardson there at Stockport. Kyle Wootton. Do you remember, Stell? People used to say, a bit of a donkey, don't fit our lovely style of football, non-league player, blah, 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 blah. Well, he's done pretty well at Stockport, hasn't he? Done very well, in fact, I would say. Lovely guy as well. What's your thoughts on going into the Lions' Den of Stockport? They put 8 past Sutton. We're on a bad run. Is it actually a great challenge to have, or is it the worst possible fixture we could have at this stage of the season with the injuries that we've got?
No, I think it's a great challenge. Perversely, I think I wouldn't call Stockport a lion's den. I think we're massively overplaying how good Stockport are and going to Stockport, Edgeley Park is. They're a decent League Two team. They're a decent team. They scored plenty of goals. They're tight at the back, and they've just scored 8, so they'll be full of confidence. But as we know, everything that's gone before counts for nothing come 7:45 on Friday. Notts were in great form before the last 7 games in the league. Notts were sat second in the league, whatever, and we've lost 5 out of the last 7. Now, if we rewind them 7 league games, nobody would have seen this run coming. Nobody would have said, "Right, Notts scoring all these goals. Yeah, we conceded, but we're not going to lose 5 out of the next 7." But that's what we've done. But there's no reason. Again, crystal ball, hindsight, all that sort of stuff. We haven't got it, so we don't know. So when you go to the team that's just scored 8, when you go to them at the top of the table, you're going away. The pressure is lessened because the expectation is lessened. Now, I'm not saying there's no pressure, because obviously there's that little bit of, I say, fear factor. There's a little bit of concern that we could get done here. If we're not at it, we could get done. But what that should do is, we're talking about a jaded performance against Harrogate, Walsall, not reaching the levels. All of a sudden, that should galvanise players to think we have got a task on our hands on Friday. Not an insurmountable task. We're not going into a lion's den. We're playing Stockport away. It's a tough away game, but no tougher than Tranmere away is going to be on New Year's Day if you don't go with the right attitude. But what playing Stockport, league leaders, just scored 8 will do, it should make sure that all the Notts players have absolutely got the right attitude, that they absolutely go about training the right way this season, that they've got to get a reaction from a poor performance at Harrogate and a poor result, whereas Stockport may think, well, we've just scored 8, and how often do you see after the Lord Mayor's show? I'm hoping that that's the case, of course. Doesn't necessarily mean, but what it means is it's a fresh game. Have Notts got the ability to go to Stockport and get a result? Absolutely they have. Have they got to play better than they have in the last couple of games? Absolutely they have. But there is nothing preset. There's nothing set in stone. We're not going up against Man City, Arsenal. We're going up against Stockport, who are so far the best team throughout the first half of this season. And it's going to be difficult. But is it an insurmountable, impossible task? Of course it's not. Absolutely it's not. But they've got to work damned hard to make sure that the performance levels are better, that we work hard to stop Stockport playing, that we set our tone in the game, that our tempo's better than it has been, our intensity in the game is better than it has been, and individual performances are better than they have been in recent weeks. But it's not impossible. The nature of it will be in League Two football means that there's ups and downs and things that none of us can see coming. Surprises, surprise results. So, look, it's a tough game. Let's make no bones about it. But it's not like we are bottom of the table, 30 points adrift of Stockport. We're sixth. We're in the playoffs, in and around the playoffs, which is where we thought we should be at the start of the season.
Yeah,
it's where we are.
Yeah.
So look, it's a tough away game, but there's loads of tough away games in this division. But it comes down to, if Notts don't play well, they could concede a load. But if Notts do play well, they could go and win the game, because there's nothing to be scared of with Stockport. There's plenty to be respectful of and not to take liberties, but there's nothing to be scared of. So they've got to go out there and they owe themselves, they owe the fans a performance. So what better time than doing it against the league leaders, isn't it? Akin to Everton losing 10-point deduction, suddenly they're the form team in the Premier League almost. Adversity, you can go one way. Again, we come down to mentality and drive and the group hunger. Adversity, you can go one way or another with it. And I think this is a Notts team that will do their damnedest to roll their sleeves up and go, come on, this ain't us. We're better than this. Let's show them. Let's go and do it. So I'm sure that can be the reaction. But it needs to be. It needs to be. And whether it's Stockport on Friday or whether it's Doncaster at home on Boxing Day, but obviously the results have got to start improving. The performances have got to start improving.
Dale Pike, says there are 3 certainties in life: death, taxes, and Notts conceding every week. Oh, dear me. Andy Easom, Aldershot found the key. Absolutely. 2 games and didn't lose against them. Jordan says, keep the back 3 for the Stockport game. We have nothing to lose, and it might bring out some character. David Amy says the players will pull their socks up and play to keep their place in the team for the new year. Ian G, Stockport will respect Notts without doubt, as they are very capable of getting a result. We are Wrexham. It's interesting. We have proper respect and relationships with Wrexham fans. There's quite a few of them listen to our show every week, unlike the old social media stuff. Have faith, guys, says We Are Wrexham, who's a regular listener. It's Christmas, the time of miracles. Take 3 points off Stockport County for us. James Shipley, generally speaking, we play better against teams that attack, and the game is more open. We struggle most against closed ranks like Harrogate, Walsall, Barrow, etc. Stel, Luke doesn't have a great many permutations to play. Do you think, broadly speaking, he sticks to the same expansive style that we would play, or is it an option for a one-off game to kind of really shut up shop, as we would say in years gone by?
Well, I would throw it back with a question. What I always think, you're better doing, your best mode of playing is by doing what your strength is. So I think if you threw it out to everybody, and again, I don't see the comments that people put, I don't know how we do that, but I would throw it out to everybody and making my own answers, which might be right, might be wrong, but I would think shutting up shop. Okay, it's a lovely phrase. It's a lovely phrase, but have we got the personnel? Have we got the strengths? Is that where our talents lie our talent, so I'm talking Notts, is that where our skill set is at its best by trying to shut up shop, or are we best served by trying to play attacking football, but just do it better than we have done, And I'm I say I'm sure, but we've spent 50 minutes talking about the inadequacies we've got defensively, the problems we've got midfield defensively, certainly in recent games, to then go, well, let's just pack the defence and midfield and invite Stockport onto us a little bit, and we'll just look to defend our box or look to defend. I don't think that's the way to go. Again, we're not looking to reinvent the wheel. We're playing a football match. If we were playing Man City, or I would maybe say, we've maybe got to rein ourselves in a little bit, because I think they'll be able to outplay us. But this is Stockport we're talking about. It's down to, and again, it comes down to the 90 minutes of who performs better in the 90 minutes. You look at the players on paper, ability-wise, there's not a great deal between them. But form-wise, at the minute, there is. But in terms of ability, can Notts produce and play at Stockport sort of level? Of course they can. Have they been doing it in recent games? No, they haven't. Can they do it? Absolutely they can. So do you then go, well, we treat Stockport with so much respect, we'll alter what we're doing? I don't think it warrants that. Again, if it's a top team, yes. And I'm not saying Stockport aren't a top team in this division, but there's not night and day difference between the two teams. I think you've always got to play to your strengths. And I think everybody, well, I'll say everybody, but a large majority of people listening to this would say Notts are better attacking than they are defending. So let's try and make that the emphasis, which is what we try and do. The big problem is that we've not been doing it well enough as a team, both ends of the pitch, in the last half dozen games. But I don't think that then means that you do something. You tweak things, of course, but you don't have a totally different way of going about it.
Okay, let me phrase it another way. Taking on board the question about three certainties in life: deaths, taxes. The third one might be that in every Notts County game that we play, we have about 71% of possession at a minimum. The reality is that hasn't recently translated to results. So we dominated possession against Walsall. We dominated possession against Harrogate, and there's been a few questions on the message boards tonight about, the Harrogate fans taking the mick a bit with the number of back passes and all of that sort of thing. Do you anticipate Notts having a lot of possession again on Friday, or do you think Stockport are going to take a much more aggressive approach, and have at least 50-50, if not the balance of possession? Because some teams just seem very content to let us have the ball, don't they?
Yeah, again, you wouldn't expect Notts maybe to have as much possession against Stockport at Edgeley Park than against other teams, because I'm sure Dave Challoner will not be saying to his players, if they want to come here and pass it around, we'll just stand off, take it off, and when we want and go and score, but just let them have the ball. I think, and again, they'll want to set the tempo. They're at home, they'll know it's a big game, so they'll be up for it as well. But they'll want to set the tempo. They won't want to allow Notts, because they know that can be dangerous. Because if Notts are back in form, back at the top of the game on Friday, and you allow Notts to have the ball, 60-odd% possession, then they know they can be hurt. Stockport are not invincible. Let's not, blow them up to be something. So I don't imagine. Well, sorry, Notts will try and have all the ball, and if Stockport put them under pressure, then it is down to how well Notts can move the ball, how good the movement off the ball is, to provide angles for the player on the ball. It's all about that, and then it's about the technique, the ability, your touch, your passing accuracy, your desire that goes into who decides what wins the game, or who comes up on top of the game, sort of thing. But if Notts are in form, they can expose any team, just like anybody can. If you're bang at it, Stockport could expose us. If Stockport are bang at it and we're off it like we have been, they could expose us. But you've got to earn the right. You've always got to earn the right. But that's, that's been done in a number of ways. It's not just about just roll the ball about. We'll just keep it. We'll keep it, and we'll eventually score a goal. You've got to go and make it happen. So you move the ball with a purpose. You move the opposition around. You might have to do it a little bit quicker and a little bit sharper than we have been doing it, which means the movement off the ball's got to be better. The desire, the drive, the running, the sprinting has got to be with more intensity than it has been doing. But again, you start at 0-0 every game, and it's about which team goes and earns the right. What's happened before counts for nothing once that whistle goes. Nobody goes into a game. Once the whistle goes, your mind goes away from, they're first in the division, we're sixth in the division, so we should give them a bit more respect and do something. No, you go, right, we might have to pass the ball a bit more accurately. Like I say, it can focus the mind a little bit to say, we can't be easy-ozy against these. We can't, I'll put it in. I won't quite make that angle for my teammate. I won't quite chase back because I don't think they're going to hurt us. Whatever it might be, it can focus the mind to make sure you're at your sharpest. And again, if that happens, I think it's going to be a great game. I really do. Because with Stockport at home, you're right, they won't just sit off us and allow us to play and pass the ball around at the back, go back to Aidan Stone, go out the other side. They'll want to be in a face. They'll want to take the ball off us. They want to keep top of the table and show that. But if not are at it, then that means there are potentially gaps to play through. And they can play through the lines, and that could play into Notts' hands. So, look, I'm expecting a really good game. I hope it's a cracker, Christmas cracker, to use a very bad pun. But, it could be the game that Notts sort of almost flips the switch that gets them back into form.
So say all of us. Will you be an ever present over the 4 games, Christmas and New Year's style?
All being well, yeah, barring illness or injury. Yep. Yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah, well, we're clocking up a few miles. Stockport, don't forget, everything has been sold. So we can't get any more Notts fans in for that game. Doncaster, I'm told, expect 14,000 on Boxing Day, so that'll be a good atmosphere. Morecambe is the Friday night, 7:45, and then I think there's still plenty of tickets available for the trip to Tranmere on New Year's Day. That wraps up our Christmas show. We'll be taking over a break over Christmas. We'll be back early in the new year. Stel, thank you ever so much, as always, for your contributions. Thank you everyone for your thoughts, messages. Clearly a very Merry Christmas from Stel and myself and everyone at the Magpie Circle crew. All our wishes, well, we know what our first wish is, don't we? 3 points on Friday night even. I'll look out for everybody there. Have a great Christmas and New Year. Look forward to catching you up. Cheers from me, and
cheers. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Good night.